Well, I do think that they are a very hopeful sign, because the two sides coming into direct contact is an important development. And despite the statements by Zelensky and the European leaders that this is further proof that Putin is uninterested in peace, the heads of the two delegations came out with very measured statements. There was an exchange, the promise of an exchange of 1,000 prisoners on each side, of a further meeting, of a formal presentation of each side's vision for the end of the conflict. So all these seem like substantial steps. And I also think that it's a good sign that the process is beginning to progress in this more perhaps mechanistic, lower level format, that top leader meetings, big headlines are not very conducive to bridging the quite substantial gulf that still exists. But boring talks repeated several times in Istanbul away from the cameras might be able to lessen that distance somewhat. If the idea is to convince Trump that Putin ultimately isn't interested in peace, then I don't think it will be terribly successful. This is the message that the Ukrainians and their European allies have been attempting to convey to Trump and the broader public since Trump's election. And Trump has, of course, occasionally gotten frustrated with Putin, but his position consistently has been that Russia is a party to this conflict, wants to settle it eventually, and that Russia is a necessary interlocutor. And we saw, I think, this morning, Rubio, or yesterday, Rubio said that Trump is intent on meeting Putin in the near term. So that seems like a pretty strong signal that Trump believes that there is something substantive to discuss with Russia's president. Russia surprised itself, perhaps, by its ability to withstand the initial round of sanctions after the invasion. Now they are more or less comfortable in this new world. And of course, there are screws that can be tightened and additional economic pain that can be inflicted on Russia. But I do not think that they believe that this will be devastating. So also within the domestic political context, additional application of Western sticks on Russia is less likely to get them to back down and considerably more likely to consolidate the position of the hawks, who think that the only definitive solution to their current problem is an undeniable military victory, and that Trump is a bunch of hot air, but essentially the West is one and is a long-term structural enemy of Russia. So sanctions are likely to be counterproductive in their, if the point is to compel Russia to lessen its demands. I think the opposite will probably be the result. And I also don't think that I know the Trump administration, or at least I understand that the Trump administration has been exploring the possibility of using additional sticks, but I don't think that they would like to use them. And I think they have an understanding of their perhaps limited impact. It could certainly end this year. I think it's probably likelier than not in 2025, but if not, it could go on for much longer. I mean, many more years, perhaps. And if it does end in the near term, I think the outlines are fairly clear. The facts on the ground will dictate much of the final picture. Neither side is likely to cede any territory beyond a few minor swaps. The US is highly unlikely to provide any substantial security guarantees to Ukraine. Ukraine will not be in NATO. Some sort of arrangements with the Europeans will be possible. And I imagine there will be some kind of limitations on Ukraine's military potential, but certainly not near the level of what was proposed in Istanbul a number of years ago. But perhaps something symbolic, or placement of weapons or personnel in particular parts of the country.